Okay, so you're trying to like really get a grasp on something, that's important, but just wading through like all the research articles and stuff, it's kind of like a job in itself, right?
Right. Yeah, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we come in. That's what we like to do is like give you the shortcut,
The express route.
Exactly, the express route, so you can get to the good stuff. So today, we are diving deep into early reading interventions, specifically what's happening in Tier 2 support.
Yes, that's right.
For students in those early grades, kindergarten through third grade, who maybe are struggling a bit with their reading and need just a little bit of extra help.
Right, and not just the general classroom reading instruction, right, but something a little bit more than that, but not quite all the way to that really intensive individual intervention.
Right, exactly. So it's like this middle ground.
That's right.
Where we're trying to figure out like what is working for these kids. And so to really unpack this, we have a fantastic source today. A really, really comprehensive meta-analysis.
Yes.
By Wansek and colleagues back in 2016.
2016, that's right.
And now, meta-analysis sounds kind of like a jargony term.
It does.
But just think of it as a super study. So rather than just one research project, Wansek and her team gathered together.
A whole bunch.
The results from like a ton of individual studies.
72.
That's right. 72 individual studies.
On this very topic.
On Tier 2 reading interventions. So it's like looking at the whole puzzle at once.
To get the big picture.
Instead of like just seeing one little piece at a time.
Right.
So we've done the hard work of reading all those 72 studies and
synthesizing all the information.
And we're going to bring you the key insights so you can save yourself a ton of time.
Exactly. And we're going to make it fun along the way.
Exactly. A little entertainment, with your research.
Why not?
So our goal today is very straightforward. We just want to understand, what does this big analysis tell us about Tier 2 reading interventions in those early grades?
Yes.
Do these less intensive supports actually make a difference? And if they do things like the type of instruction that's given the size of the group the kid's in, even who's delivering that intervention.
Right. Does any of that matter?
Does any of that actually make a difference?
Yeah. Are there certain things that we should be looking for that make it more effective?
Exactly.
Okay,
so let's jump in. And I think the first question, the big question is always like, do these interventions even work?
Right. Do they work?
Right. So.
Yeah. And this meta-analysis looked at it in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Measured all kinds of aspects of reading ability.
Yeah.
And the overall message is pretty positive.
Okay, give us the overview. Like, what kind of impact are we talking about?
Well, when it comes to foundational reading skills, things like phonological awareness, phonics, word recognition fluency, those really important basic building blocks of reading.
Right.
They found moderate positive effects.
Yeah.
And this was true whether they looked at standardized tests or non-standardized tests, the kind that maybe are just made for a particular intervention, so it didn't really matter.
So pretty consistent.
Pretty consistent. They found those effects. And the average effect size was in the range of 0.54 to 0.62.
Okay.
Now, to give you an idea what that means in education research, that's generally considered like a pretty good improvement.
Solid. Yeah.
Solid.
Meaningful.
Yeah.
So those kids who are struggling with those essential building blocks of reading, this Tier 2 support is looking like it can really make a difference.
Yeah, it's helping them catch up.
Now, what about when we start to think about the understanding piece of it? Right?
Right.
Like the comprehension.
Right. Yeah, because that's a whole
other ball game.
Yeah.
So what did they find?
Yeah, so that gets a little bit more complex.
Okay.
When they looked at standardized tests that measured language and comprehension, the positive effect was smaller.
Okay.
Around 0.36.
Okay.
But when they looked at non-standardized measures, so tests that were linked more to what was taught in the specific interventions, the effect size jumped up quite a bit to 1.02.
Wow. Okay.
But it's important to note that there were fewer studies that used those non-standardized measures.
Right. And I would think those standardized comprehension tests are, like you said, more broad. Yeah,
they're not getting at those very specific things that the interventions were teaching.
And harder to really move the needle on with those kinds of less intensive interventions.
Yeah, that's right. And that's why you see that big jump in the effect size when they're aligned.
Okay, so this is where things get really interesting to me anyway, because it's not just did these interventions work, but also were there certain things about the way they were set up? Yeah. That made a difference. And some of what they found was really interesting.
It was, and a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Like, for example, let's start with the type of intervention. Did it matter if the intervention just focused on those foundational skills?
Yeah.
Or if it had like a broader multi-component
Like
vocabulary comprehension strategies, like all the things.
Right. Yeah. Was there an advantage to one or the other?
Yeah. And so what did they find?
This was one of the kind of surprising ones.
Yeah.
The meta-analysis didn't find any significant differences in the overall effectiveness.
So you're telling me
I am.
that whether you are like super focused on phonics and word recognition, or if you're also bringing in like vocabulary development and comprehension strategies.
It didn't really make a difference.
It didn't really make a difference.
And the overall impact on those kids' reading skills, at least not at this level.
Yeah, that seems counterintuitive. Like,
it does. You would think, right?
Yeah.
But this is what the research found. And they even talked about this themselves. They were kind of surprised by this.
Oh, interesting.
They said, for the standardized tests of those foundational skills, the improvement was about the same. Whether the intervention focused only on those skills, 0.47 was the effect size.
Okay.
Or if it included these other components, and then the effect size was 0.5.
Oh, right. So not a big difference.
Not a big difference. And then when they looked at the standardized language and comprehension tests, it was 0.4 versus 0.35.
Again, not a big difference. Not a significant difference.
And then for those non-standardized foundational skills, it was 0.59 versus 0.67.
So it seems like in these early grades, in this tier 2 support context, like what they're focusing on isn't the biggest factor.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Right.
And maybe that's something to think about, right? Like maybe at this point it doesn't matter as much as long as they're getting, good support in those areas.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What about like group size? So obviously you would think, one-on-one you're going to get so much more,
much better, right?
benefit than being in even a small group.
Yeah.
Right.
So what did they say about that?
So that's another area where they didn't find significant differences in effectiveness.
Really?
So they compared one-on-one tutoring to small groups of 2 to 3 students.
Okay.
And even a little bit larger groups, 4 to 5 students.
Yeah.
And again, they saw some variation in the effect sizes, but nothing that was really like...
significant.
Yeah, a statistically significant difference.
Like, for example?
So, for example, for standardized foundational skills, one-on-one had an effect size of 0.5. Groups of 2 to 3 had 0.61, and then groups of 4 to 5, 0.44.
So again, like up and down a little bit, but nothing.
Not a big difference.
Okay, so it seems like a small group setting isn't necessarily bad in this, tier 2 intervention context.
And this could have some pretty interesting implications for schools.
Huge.
Because, if they're trying to figure out how to provide this support.
Support a lot of kids.
Yeah. And it may not be detrimental to put them in small groups.
Exactly. And it might be a more efficient way to reach more kids who need that help.
Interesting. Now, what about the grade level of the kids? Did it make a difference? Like if you were...
Yeah, like is it more effective in kindergarten than it is in 3rd grade?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they looked at that too, and guess what?
No difference.
No significant difference.
Yeah.
Yeah, based on grade level.
Interesting.
They looked at kindergarten, 1st grade, and then a combined group of 2nd and 3rd graders.
Okay.
And so for standardized foundational skills, the effect sizes were 0.5, 4.5, and 0.4. Okay. So again, bouncing around a little bit.
Yeah.
But for standardized language and comprehension, they were 0.34, 0.25, and then 0.51.
Ooh, going up a little bit.
Yeah. So maybe, that's something to think about if kids get a little bit older. Maybe those skills become more responsive to tier 2 interventions. And they did point out that most of the studies that they included in this meta-analysis focused on KN1.
Right.
So we need more research.
More research for 2nd and 3rd.
Yeah, in those later grades.
Interesting. Okay, so we've talked about kind of what intervention and who's receiving it what. About who's delivering the intervention, does it make a difference if it's like, a researcher versus a classroom teacher?
Versus just somebody who works at the school.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And this is a really practical question.
It is for schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it has to be delivered by a researcher.
Right.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Not very practical.
Not very practical.
So what do they find?
Well, good news.
Okay, good.
They found no significant differences in how effective the interventions were, whether they were delivered by researchers or by school personnel.
Okay.
So that's good news.
That is good news.
Teachers, rating specialists, whoever's doing it.
Yeah.
It can be effective.
That's great.
As long as
they're trained.
They're trained. Well, they have good resources, things like that.
And it kind of speaks to the fact that these interventions should be pretty straightforward to implement.
Yeah. You would hope so.
Yeah.
But, as with all research, there were a few caveats. They did say that they didn't have a ton of information about the qualifications of all the school personnel.
Right.
So that would be helpful.
More research.
More research is needed.
Needed on that.
Yes.
And, okay, so one more question about the kind of the nuts and bolts of the interventions themselves.
Okay.
What about the amount of time that kids are spending in them?
Right.
Does more time always equal better results?
Yeah, you would think, right?
Yeah.
More time you're working on these skills.
Yeah, more practice.
The better they're going to get.
Right.
But again, not necessarily.
Yeah.
So they didn't find a significant relationship between the total number of hours in the intervention and the effect on those standardized tests of foundational skills.
Interesting.
They looked at interventions that lasted from as little as 1 to 10 hours, all the way up to over 40 hours. Yeah. And the average effect sizes just kind of bounced around.
No real trend.
No real trend.
Wow. Okay. So
it's not always about just doing more.
Right.
Sometimes it's about doing it well.
Right. And really being targeted and focused.
Exactly.
Okay. So we've covered a lot about like the big picture. Did they work? And then do certain features seem to matter?
Yeah.
But, as with any research, like there's always some things to keep in mind.
Right. Some caveats.
Yeah. Some nuances.
Limitations.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about?
Well, even though they didn't find statistically significant differences, when they compared these different features, they did see that sometimes the average levels of improvement varied in interesting ways.
Okay.
So this suggests that there might be some real trends there, but they just didn't have the statistical power to really be sure about it.
Yeah. And what do we mean by statistical power?
Well, it basically means, like, if you think about trying to hear, like, a really faint whisper in a noisy room, you might kind of get a sense of what's being said.
Right.
But you can't be totally sure you heard it correctly. And that's kind of like what's happening here.
So they're picking up on something, but they can't really say for sure.
And then
more studies.
More research.
More studies.
In each of those categories.
Got it. Okay.
To really know.
So those variations, even though they weren't statistically significant, could still be like...
Yeah, they could be pointing to something.
A little hint.
Like, hey, maybe this does matter, but we need to look closer.
Got it. Okay.
And then another thing that they talked about was publication bias.
Oh, yes.
The famous publication bias.
The file drawer problem.
The file drawer problem, right?
Where all the studies that didn't find anything end up in the drawer.
Because journals tend to publish the stuff that's exciting and positive.
Right. You want to see the big effects.
Exactly. And so when they use some statistical techniques to kind of estimate how many unpublished studies might be out there.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They did find some evidence that maybe there are some missing studies.
Interesting.
So that means that the true effects might be a little bit smaller than the ones they originally reported.
Okay.
And this was particularly true for those standardized tests of foundational skills.
Okay.
And both standardized and non-standardized measures of language and comprehension.
Okay, so just kind of bringing those numbers down a little bit?
Yeah, taking it with a grain of salt.
But it's interesting that they didn't find that for the non-standardized measures of foundational reading skills.
Right.
So that's holding up.
Yeah, that's holding strong.
Okay. Now, you mentioned earlier that a lot of these studies were on those early grades, K and 1. Why is that an important thing to think about?
Well, because it means that we have a much better picture of what's happening in those early grades than in second and third grade.
Yeah.
And as kids get older, the demands of reading change.
Right.
The types of support they need might also need to change.
Absolutely. And it also just highlighted, they even said, like, we need more research on these later grades.
Yeah.
These tier 2 interventions, what's happening in second and third.
Especially when it comes to language and reading comprehension.
Yeah.
It's a big
area.
Yeah, big area for future research.
Interesting. Okay, and then there were just a couple other limitations that I think are important to mention. One was, they didn't always have a lot of details about the qualifications and training of the people who were delivering the interventions.
Right. Yeah. So we don't really know if there was a big difference based on, how much training they had or what their background was.
And then the other thing was just this idea, the dosage of the intervention.
Right.
So like how long were the sessions?
Right. How often were they happening?
Exactly. And they didn't always have
Right.
a lot of detail on that.
That would be helpful, wouldn't it?
It would be very helpful.
For future research.
Yeah. And I think those are all things that, as researchers are kind of trying to nail down and get more information on so we can really, say, okay, if you're going to do this, make sure it looks like this.
Yeah. And it would be more effective.
Exactly. Okay. So
that was a lot of information.
That was a lot. We covered a lot. But I think the main takeaway, what's the big thing that you want people to walk away with?
The big takeaway is those less intensive reading interventions.
Right.
The tier 2 interventions in the early grades generally do lead to positive improvements.
That's good news.
That is good news, especially in those foundational reading skills.
Right.
So that's the first good news. But then the other piece of it is they didn't find a lot of evidence that all those different features that we talked about, whether it's focused on foundational skills or comprehensive group size.
Yeah, who's delivering it?
Any of that made a consistent difference
in
the results.
Interesting. Okay, so what was for you like a finding that really stood out to you? Maybe something you found a little surprising or particularly interesting?
Well, I thought that whole idea that more hours of intervention didn't necessarily equal better outcomes for the tier 2 interventions was really interesting.
Especially for foundational skills.
Yeah, because you would think more is better, but maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more about
quality.
The quality of the intervention.
Focus.
Yes.
Okay.
And then the other thing that I thought was really interesting was the lack of a difference between the foundational skills focus versus the comprehensive interventions in those early grades.
That was surprising to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like we need more research there to really figure that out. Okay, so what does all this mean for the person who's listening, whether they are an educator, a parent, just somebody who's really interested in reading?
Well, I think for you, it gives you a really good overview of what we know.
Yeah.
And it helps to manage your expectations because we know that tier 2 support in general can work.
It's good news.
That's the good news.
Yes.
But we don't necessarily know what's the absolute best way to structure it.
Right.
So it might be more about focusing on just doing it well.
Yes.
Using good practices.
Yeah. Implementing those evidence-based practices consistently.
Yeah.
Rather than like splitting hairs about should it be one-on-one, should it be, in a group.
Exactly.
Okay. And this also highlights, the fact that we need more research.
More research.
In those later grades.
Yes.
How do we support comprehension at this level? And then also getting more information about, the qualifications of the people delivering the intervention.
Yeah.
And the amount of time it's being delivered.
Yeah.
So we still have some
work to do.
We have a lot to learn.
We do.
But this meta-analysis, gives us a good foundation.
A really good foundation.
Okay, so for you, the listener, I'll leave you with a couple of things to think about.
Okay.
Since, the how and the who didn't seem to matter as much in this big picture, analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Does the real key lie in the quality of that instruction?
Yeah.
And the consistent application of those evidence-based practices?
Really good question.
And then the other thing I would just say is, if less intensive interventions can have this positive effect, what makes the difference for a kid who responds well?
Right. Versus a kid who needs more.
Versus a kid who needs
intensive support.
Intensive support.
Yeah, really good question.
So I'll leave you with those.
Something to ponder.
Something to ponder.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, it was fun.
I love talking about reading.
Me too.
It's the best.
It is.